So then Shaykh al-Fawzan, he mentioned a statement from Shaykh Ihsan Ilahi Zahir, rahimahullah ta'ala, from the Mashayikh of Pakistan, rahimahullah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept his martyrdom, because he was killed at the hands of the enemies of the Sunnah. And we hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala counts him amongst the shuhada. That he wrote in his book, At-Tasawwuf, its origin and sources. At-Tasawwuf, its origin and its sources. He said, when we delve into the teachings of Tasawwuf and Sufism, from the early times and the later times, and their statements that are narrated from them in their books of Sufism of old and of modern times, meaning if one was to delve into their books and read what they have written, he said that we see how far distant and remote there is, or that the remoteness there is between their teachings and the teachings of the book and the Sunnah, of the Quran and the Sunnah. He said, and likewise, we do not see them rooted and founded in the teachings of the life of the chief of mankind, the Sayyid of the Khalqillah, and that is, of course, the Sayyidul Khalq, and he is Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. That we do not find in their books their teachings being rooted in the seerah or in the biography and the life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam and his noble companions, those who were the obedient, dutiful, and the best of Allah's creation and the finest of all beings. Rather, with Sufism, it is the opposite. We see in their books taking and adopting the ideas of the Christian monks and the Brahmin Hindus and the ascetic Jews and the abstinent Buddhists. That's what we find in the actions and the behavior and the ideology of the people of Tasawwuf in all of their different forms and shades. So with this discussion, we understand that Sufism actually, and it is something actually that we've seen with our own eyes, that when one opens up the books of Sufiya and Tasawwuf, that they have written themselves, of old and of new, you find that it all rotates around their admiration and their veneration of their saints, and what one should do when he approaches the grave, and what a person should do in terms of seeking nearness to the saint in his grave. So, when we looked at those principles that we stated at the beginning, the 6 principles of Shaykh al-Fawzan, Hafidhullah, laid down, or that he mentioned, that Ahlul Sunnah are established upon, that the Muslims, their Sharia is established upon, you see them violating them. So when we look at the first one, that the ibadah is known by what? By tawqifiyya. By something that is only known by revelation. Ibadah cannot be invented. Straight away they've opposed this. The dhikr that they make, it is not something reported in the kitab and the sunnah. When they wave their heads from one side to another, Allahu, 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 with a candle lit in front of them, or whilst they are smoking hashish, or whilst they are standing and running around in circles like the dervishes do. Is that something that is reported in the kitab and the sunnah? Because that's the first principle. The ibadah, that worship is something that is only known by revelation, not by the aql, or nor by that which feels good. Well, it feels good, let's do it. It is not known by how you feel, nor by desires and nor by the aql. Secondly, that it must be done purely for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Khalisan. That the ibadah is khalisa. Lillahi ta'ala. That it is done purely for Allah, and it must be free from the pollution of shirk. They are the foremost in shirk. They go to the graves and they ask the one who is dead in his grave for intercession, to bring them closer to Allah, and they call it tawassul and shafa'ah. When in reality it is nothing but shirkul akbar. It is major shirk and idolatry. Just as the mushrikeen used to say, مَا نَعْبُدُهُمْ إِلَّا لِيُقَرِّبُونَ إِلَى اللَّهِ زُلْفَى. That we do not worship our idols except that they bring us closer to Allah in rank. They say that we do not worship our saints in the graves except that they bring us closer to Allah. هَؤُلَاءِ شُفَعَاؤُنَا إِنَّ اللَّهِ. And they say that these are our intercessors between us and Allah. Exactly what the mushrikeen used to say. So they violated that second principle, third principle, that the ibadah is only done in the manner that the Prophet ﷺ did it. He is your qudwa, he is your uswa, he is your example, he is the one to be emulated. All of their ibadah or much of their ibadah has got nothing to do with the sunnah of Allah's Messenger ﷺ. From the tawaf of the graves, to sajda at the graves, to the ruku at the graves, to their singing in the night, to their celebration of the birthday of the Prophet ﷺ. Nothing to do with the sunnah. Rabi'an. Fourthly, that the ibadah that is limited by time and quantity, that it is not to be taken beyond that time and quantity. This is something that is clearly opposed by them. They say you want a woman who's beautiful. Read Surah Yasin 422 times over some hot water and then bathe in it, or something similar to this. Something that they've just invented and it sounds good to them. So they add a number to something that doesn't have a number. Sometimes the bid'ah is bid'ah asliyah. Sometimes it is idafiyah, meaning sometimes the innovation that they innovate has no basis in the Sharia whatsoever. And sometimes it is idafiyah, meaning that there is a basis to it in the Sharia, but the manner in which they do it is something that is not reported in the Sharia. So their dhikr, for example, they will say recite such and such, as we'll mention one or two examples. They will say recite such and such, such and such a number of times, maybe umpteen number of times. And if you were to do so, then Allah will grant you wealth and grant you business success. Or if you hang the number 786, or whatever number they choose for themselves, 412, or whatever they believe, 412 is Ayatul Kursi, or 786 is Bismillah, or whatever they've invented from their heads. They say hang this up and put it on your arm, or hang it around your neck, or whatever, and you'll be protected from the evil eye of others, and so on. Amulets. And codifying into numbers, verses of the Quran. So you see them changing times, changing period, changing number, changing location. Tawaf is of what? Of the Baytullah, of the Kaaba. They make tawaf of the house of Allah. The Qibla for the Muslims is the Kaaba, Mecca, in the direction of the Qibla. The Haram. Their Qibla changes when they're in front of the grave. Or they'll make sajda towards the grave of Abdul-Qadir al-Jilani. Or as they enter into the shrine of Ahmed al-Badawi in Egypt, that they will make sajda and ruku'. And when they leave it, they will not turn their back. And they will take off their shoes before entering his shrine. So you see them inventing these types of things. And likewise the rest. Some of them, like the sixth point that he mentioned. The ibadah does not come to an end upon the mukallaf, upon the one who is subject to the commands of Allah from the age of his bulugh, from the age of his adulthood, whilst he is sane up until he dies. What does the Sufis say? That some of their sheikhs reach such a level of ibadah and nearness to Allah that they don't need to worship Allah anymore. They don't need to worship Allah anymore. My father, rahimahullah, used to tell us a story of a Sufi that he used to know. He said he used to stay in our house. He said before you were born in the 60s. And in the early 60s, he said that he used to sleep and he was the only one in the house who never used to pray Fajr. So he said one of your uncles came in and he said, what's wrong with you? You got this man in the house, you say that he's a saint or he's a peer or whatever you call him. The man doesn't even pray Fajr. So they plucked up enough courage to ask him. He said, you don't understand. His soul is taken by the angels at Fajr time to the Haram in Mecca. He prays Fajr there and then he's brought back. This is tasawwuf and this is Sufiya. For everything there is a answer that they have that leads them more and more into misguidance. And of course, those who follow the paths of Sufiya, you find them story after story, and wallahi, some of the stories are despicable. Some of them are, in fact, you couldn't repeat them because of the level of their, the things that they discuss and the intimate nature of what they do with animals and with children and so on.